welcome to the Wire's live show. I'm Jahnavi Sen, and with me today I have MK Venu, who's the founding editor of The Wire. Now, what happened yesterday evening was that the US administration under Donald Trump has announced that in addition to the 25% tariff on Indian goods already announced by the US, there's going to be an additional 25% penalty because India continues to import oil from Russia. This brings the total tariff on Indian goods in the US to 50%, making a large number of Indian goods actually unviable in the US markets. Now, the two countries have been undergoing trade talks, and 5 rounds of these negotiations have already taken place. The sixth round is supposed to take place later this month. But the Indian government has come down strongly against the US's latest announcement, saying that it's extremely unfortunate and that the Trump administration is penalizing India for things that other countries are also doing in their own national interest. Now, Venu, I think what a lot of us are wondering is this is an extremely high tariff rate.
Yeah.
What is the impact going to be on the ground in India?
See, a 50% tariff on Indian exports to US will negatively impact in Indian companies which are exporting to the US.
Right.
Now, roughly, some trade experts have suggested that a tariff rate this high could reduce India's exports to the US by 30-40%. Some suggest even 50%. Now, currently, India's exports to the US annually is about 87 billion. Let's say 90 billion. Now, these exports are dominated by 3 or 4 sectors mainly. One is the textiles, garments, apparel sector, which is roughly about 10 billion. Then there is the gems and jewelry, precious stones with some value add. That is also a big exports from India. That's also about 10 billion. And the third is electrical equipment, electricals and electronics. Now, within electronics, you also have the iPhones, which India has projected as a big achievement. iPhones being made here and exported. Now, that's also about 10 billion. So I would imagine that textiles, garments, and gems and jewelry, they would suffer because they would be 50% more expensive in the US.
Yeah.
Now,
we have some data that was brought out by the Global Trade Research Initiative.
Yeah.
And so a very large proportion of Indian exports in these sectors is going to the US.
Yeah, large proportion.
Between 35 and 50%, depending on the sector.
Yeah, depending. Yeah. So if now these sectors are very labor intensive. So my sense is that these sectors will suffer and employment in these sectors will be impacted. That is a worry for me because although at a macro level, India constitutes Indian exports or Indian trade with US constitutes just 2% of US's total trade, right? So, but in real numbers, it will impact some of these sectors. So, our government will have to be prepared to deal with this kind of this negative impact, this shock. I would say it will be a shock for the garments, textiles, garments, apparel sector.
Because a lot of the competing countries will now have much lower tariff rates than the
Yeah, the competing countries will do better than us. So, so this is one aspect.
Yeah.
I'm now focusing on the employment part, because these are labor intensive, right? Generally, at a macro level, Goldman Sachs and some other equity research firms have suggested that the tariff of this order, 50%, could lead to a reduction of GDP by more than 0.5%. So some of them are saying it could go down to 6% and below. So India was generally calculating before the 25% tariff came and then another 25%. India was kind of celebrating earlier, if you remember, when the Trump tariffs were paused in April, and then India at that time was happy that even at 25%, India seemed comfortable that it won't impact our economy so much, because it was still comparable with many other economies. Of course, more than, say, Vietnam, more than Japan, South Korea, because they all have 15%. Vietnam and about 19-20%.
Yeah.
Indonesia is also about 19-20%. But that gap India could have managed. 5% higher than others. India could have still managed to push in its exports of 50%. Makes India really uncompetitive, and it will impact our GDP. But this is not, 50% is not final, as the announcement it says that there's a 21 days
Right.
period, that grace period has had been given to us by Trump,
Yeah.
in which the agreement, the bilateral trade agreement, is still being negotiated, and Trump himself has said this is not the final thing. If India comes forward and comes up with some offers, then there could be a waiver, there could be a reduction of duties. But the problem is, Trump has introduced this Russian oil purchases as a condition that India should not buy Russian oil. That, I think, Indian government has already taken a position that it will continue to buy Russian oil, because it helps India.
Right.
Cheaper Russian oil has helped India in the past. India will continue to buy Russian oil. Now, before the Ukraine war, India was buying less than 1%. India's share of oil imports was less than 1% from Russia. Now it is 36%. So now it's anybody's guess whether India would reduce it from 36 down further to maybe 30 or 25. Now, if that happens, the opposition will scream, saying that this is surrender. So, and I don't think the Indian government this time around is in a mood to give in. And one indication that I saw was the Prime Minister addressing a public meeting this morning, where he said that he is going to defend India's farm sector, India's farmers. He'll protect India's farmers. He said even if he has to pay a personal price.
Yes.
Now, that's a very strong statement. That's clearly telling Trump that no compromise on agriculture. If one simply goes by Modi's statement on the face of it. So now the only thing that then remains in the bilateral trade agreement, I am told that an interim agreement was agreed upon between the officials, Indian officials and the US officials. The deal was put before Trump, and I'm told that the deal was a fairly attractive one for insofar as the manufacturing sector is concerned. I'm told that India's tariffs on manufacturing sector was brought down from double digit. It is somewhere around, I think, 15 or 16%. It was brought down to single digit. Whether it was 6 or 7 or whatever, the gap between what US charges us on the manufacturing side and what India charges US tariffs was considerably narrowed. But for some reason, Trump did not agree, and he just rejected that. Now, a lot of experts are saying that. I spoke to a former foreign secretary this morning, and he was saying that clearly Trump has taken this very personally. The fact that he's had to say some 33 times that he intervened in Operation Sindoor and helped with the ceasefire,
Right.
and the fact that India is not conceding that, and India has just been silent on that, it is something that this is Trump's ego. He's still, I think he's taken it to heart. I don't know how India deals with his ego, and I don't know how India deals with its purchases of Russian oil, and how India also deals with its commitment to further deepen relationship with Russia on very critical high tech equipment, such as the BrahMos missile. Further, there is some news reports that India is further going to deepen its co-production of high tech equipment with Russia. So all these things are now up in the air. So we will have to see how this pans out. But
Yeah.
the net impact, Janvi, is that uncertainty in India will continue, and as many economists are saying, investments in India will stall for at least for the short to medium term. I don't think investments will come in the next 6 months. So
Yeah.
that's a very serious fallout of this. Yeah.
You mentioned the opposition. Already we've had Rahul Gandhi say that, this is a time for the government to be strong because this is an attempt at some sort of arm twisting by the US administration to suddenly come up with this additional 25% penalty. You mentioned what the Prime Minister said at an event to commemorate MS Swaminathan's centenary year about how, he will protect farmers. He did not mention the US or tariffs, but it was clearly
he doesn't mention Trump or US.
As usual, he did not name anyone, but that was clearly a reference to what's going on within the trade negotiations. But we've had other countries come out much stronger on this. Like the only other country facing a tariff as high as Brazil, and we've had the Brazilian President Lula say that he's going to make an effort to reach out to leaders of BRICS countries and try to come up with a way to counter these tariffs together in a moment of solidarity. Do you think something like that is on the cards for India as well?
Well, India has nothing against. India has not said a word naming Trump. Mr. Modi has not directly, countered Trump, nor has the Ministry of External Affairs spoken about Trump. Now, the problem is US and India, until about a few weeks ago, or Piyush Goyal, the Commerce Minister, if you see statements over the last, say, 3-4 months, he's been constantly been saying that US is our major future tech partner, future partner in high tech, space, defense, and AI technology. Now, having made such a huge commitment towards a partnership with the US, it's very clear that the government is finding it very difficult to walk back and talk like Lula, as you said, or give a pushback like China did, or even Japan did. Now, Japan is clearly an ally, a military ally of the US, unlike India. So, in that sense, Japan has, it enjoys the United States' nuclear umbrella. So, in that sense, even Japan has pushed back. So, India, in my view, India should come up with a stronger statement, because as is now apparent with Trump, remaining soft doesn't help. Remaining soft makes him, emboldens him further. So he keeps sort of piling on more penalties on you. So that seems to be the order at the moment. Now, I don't know. Trump has also talked about BRICS nations being subjected to some penalty. So I really don't know whether he would subject some additional penalties on BRIC nations, because in his press conference, somebody asked him, why are you focusing on penalizing only India? Why are you targeting only India? Because there are all other nations are buying Russian oil. China is buying Russian oil. European Union, US itself has been buying Russian oil. US has been buying Russian fertilizer. US has been importing Russian uranium. All this while sanctions were on. And European Union has been enjoying Russia's oil indirectly, which has come through India. India has refined and sold to European Union. So in that sense, that whole arrangement after the Ukraine war, post sanctions, Russian oil coming through India and being exported to EU, had stabilized oil prices. Now, this is a reality which everybody understands, everybody knows. But when Trump was asked this, why aren't you targeting others? So he said something to the effect that you wait, this is not the end of it. So we really don't know what he's going to come up with in the next say weeks or months ahead. But one thing is certain, that China has managed to not only push back, but China has also managed to tame Trump a fair bit, and China managed to get its tariffs reduced from 145% down to fairly low levels relative to that. And Trump and China has managed to get a great deal on technology. US which was under Biden, which has created this big policy on export controls on semiconductor chips software. China has managed to get from Trump software design for semiconductor chips. That's a huge breakthrough for China, insofar as the US is concerned.
Yeah.
And China has agreed to sell to the US EV magnets, the rare earth magnets, which are very critical for not only electrical vehicles, very critical for defense equipment, very critical for missiles, supersonic, hypersonic missiles. When China has that leverage, it used it because US needed those rare earth magnets. US didn't have, their stocks were finishing. Indian companies have also been crying. Indian auto companies, Tata's, Bajaj Motors, Mahindra, their stocks are also finishing, but India doesn't have a solution so far. So in a sense, as of now, India is not in a good place, and many analysts are saying that this is clearly a low for India's foreign policy. Like I would say we seem to have fallen between several stools. Although some apologists for the government are arguing that this also shows that India is exercising its strategic autonomy. But I would say that Trump has really forced India to look at its earlier multi-alignment policy, look at BRICS, look at other relationships. The Prime Minister is going to for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting. He'll be meeting Xi Jinping on the sidelines. So a lot of hopes are pinned on what now India does with BRICS, with Russia, with China. China is opening up, and let's see what happens.
Yeah. I think, one of the things that has been interesting to watch is there was a lot of touting of this personal relationship that Donald Trump and Narendra Modi shared and was visible in many ways. We had the Howdy Modi event, and we had Trump coming here to Ahmedabad and Namaste Trump, and both of them referring to each other as my friend and all of that. And even when Trump was first elected, Modi immediately going to visit him and things like that. But clearly all of that friendship has now fallen through the cracks, and perhaps the Indian side has not yet been willing to acknowledge that, and that's why this naming of exactly what's going on hasn't been coming from the highest levels.
Yeah, I think that story is over.
Yeah.
There were many serious senior foreign policy ex-ambassadors, ex-foreign secretaries, ex-NSAs, Shiv Shankar Menon on wire. They've been saying that this personal relationship is highly overrated. Countries don't, interact or do or cooperate based on personal relationships. Personal relationships may supplement something which is already there at the base.
Right.
Where if so basic vibes have to be there at the level of the two nations, their institutions, their bureaucracies, their peoples. Now, all those things seem to exist with vis-a-vis US, but Trump seems to have really, in a way, I think he has delivered a shock to Modi at a personal level. Because if you remember in the Namaste Trump event back in 2020 at the Motera Stadium in Gujarat, Ahmedabad, Modi introduced Trump, and I want people to recall what he said. He said, "My friend, I'm introducing to you my friend," and then he said, "India's friend." So the emphasis was on first my friend and then India's friend. So now I think both are now in jeopardy. So personal relationship, it's over. Now hard-headed diplomacy, hard-headed sitting down and looking at the geopolitics, the geoeconomics. And let's face it, this is now, it is not just about tariffs now. What Trump is doing is not about tariffs. As I said, I've been speaking to a lot of senior diplomats, retired Indian ambassadors, Indian foreign secretary retired. They are saying that this is something bigger happening around us. So, in fact, one interpretation is that this whole Indo-Pacific strategy of the US, which had started from not only Biden, even before that, Obama's time, and this creation of Quad as a kind of counter to China, with Japan, Australia, India, and US being part of Quad. Uh, all these things are under review. The Indo-Pacific strategy of the US seems to be getting diluted, according to a very senior former foreign secretary I spoke to, and he said Quad is also, it seems, is an ICU. I don't. He said you don't know what will happen to Quad, because the Quad meeting is also likely to come up in the next 6 months or whatever. So and US is improving its relations with China. There is some talk that Trump might be visiting China in a few months. So a lot of moving parts,
Yeah.
and India needs to really reassess the whole landscape. And I remember even opposition leaders like P. Chidambaram wrote a piece in the Indian Express, two pieces where he wrote, where he ended by saying that India-US relations are not the same anymore. We have to go back to the drawing board, look at everything afresh. So that, I believe, it appears, seems to be happening. So let's see what transpires in the all the diplomatic initiatives, games that have been played.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Venu, for breaking this all down for us. And I think the next 20 days we're going to have to watch to see whether these new penalty rates actually come into force and what that would mean for the labor-intensive manufacturing sector in India. And we will be following all of this on our website and our YouTube channel. So please do keep following. That's all we have for today. Thank you.